We're talking with Ronda Litzenberger, who is the Republican candidate for the 2nd District. Welcome to the program, Ronda.
Thank you. So great to be here.
Ronda, let's get right to it. Can you share with people out there what your motivation is to run for office and what your qualifications are for the Senate?
Well, my husband and I have been small business owners for the last 30 years. We've raised 5 children in this area. I've lived in the 2nd Legislative District my whole life. I've been deeply involved in the community in every aspect of volunteerism. And for the last 12 years, I have served as a school board director for Eatonville School District. I've had the privilege to be on the Washington State School Directors Association Legislative Committee. And in that capacity, I've spent a lot of time in Olympia advocating for parental rights, advocating for education, for broadband issues, land use issues, as well as telemedicine. And it was while I was there that I've had unique experiences and opportunities to really see that there's a value and the views and values of the 2nd Legislative District being brought forward, and that I really strongly believe that I'm the right person to bring that voice to Olympia.
Ronda, I ask every candidate that I interview what their position is on abortion and gun rights. Can you share your stand on both those issues?
Absolutely. Well, as far as gun rights go, I believe that every law-abiding citizen has the right to keep and bear arms. I don't think I'm unique in my stance as far as those in my community. We all are very stand firmly beside the Second Amendment. As far as abortion goes, that's very near and dear to my heart. I was raised at the Capitol steps waving signs of pro-life movement. My mother was actually one of the people that would go to high schools and speak. Back in the day, it used to be they would teach about abortion, and then they'd have a altar voice come in and teach about abstinence and adoption, and my mother was one of those people. And at the end of one of her presentations, a 14-year-old girl came up and said, "I was scheduled to have an abortion this next weekend. I've listened to what you had to say. Would you be willing to adopt my child?" And so my youngest sister was adopted because of my mother's proactive and our family's pro-life experience. And so I just can't imagine life without my youngest sister and her children. They've been a great blessing in my life.
So let's switch to some state-related issues. COVID-19 has caused an amazing amount of backlash to our state's revenue. And some estimates go as high as $8 billion in losses over the next couple of years. Can you share as a state senator what you would do to help balance the budget and help our state to recover?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate that we haven't been able to have a special session, because the 19 to 21 budget increased by $8.6 billion, higher than it had been in the past. We had a great reserve that now has been spent out. If we would have really addressed this in July, I think we could have really put a stopgap in a lot of that spending. But we're going to have to look at addressing regulatory reforms. We're going to have to really focus on getting the economy up and moving. Tax abatement, maybe for some, deferring quarterly taxes for small businesses. We need to put a freeze on government spending and hiring and budget increases. We really are better off right now to save the economy that we had at one point. Just a few months ago, this was the most robust economy that Washington had ever seen. We need to get back to that point, and we've got to do that by really supporting small business owners and letting Washington do what it does best, and that's be really good at industry. So I think it's going to be both in part of restarting the economy as well as looking at budget cuts. And then also we need to really encourage officials to give us some flexibility around some of the CARES funding that's come out.
You just mentioned small business owners, and as you know, the Washington State Labor and Industries has been finding business owners that did not adhere to the governor's stay home, stay healthy order. Do you have any comments about those fines being levied on business owners that are already being hurt by the economy and the COVID crisis?
Well, Ronald Reagan once said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And I'm telling you, we as small business owners have felt that in a very real and personal perspective this last few months. I really wish that the government would come in with a carrot rather than a stick, and they would be partners in helping us move forward. Every business owner wants to make sure that we're keeping our employees and our patrons healthy and safe. I think if we were partners in that work, rather than really creating that idea of fear and additional burden on small business, I feel like that would be a better path forward.
A different subject right now, let's switch over to education. Parents for Safe Schools gathered more than 266,000 signatures to put on the ballot the repeal of Senate Bill 5395, which requires every public school in the state to provide sexual health education. Now, on the surface, that sounds really great, but that education would start for children as young as kindergarten. What's your take on this law and this policy that's being pushed by the Democrats?
Well, I've had the unique opportunity to really be working with this policy for the last 2 sessions. I was appointed as one of 3 school board directors to be a part of the legislative committee that was brought together. We spent the whole summer really investigating and looking at that work. It's unfortunate, and really, I'm really sorry to say that I was the only person on that 15-person panel that had a concern around that K-3 comprehensive sex ed. The issues stem around parental rights. They stem around loss of local control, unfunded mandates, and really the time that we already is so precious in our classrooms. So there are multiple issues with this bill, and I am so heartened and grateful. We put a lot of time in, a lot of work into getting those signatures, particularly during this COVID time. It was great to see people really making the extra effort to sign that petition.
Another subject change. Let's talk about some of the protests and the violence that's been taking place across the nation since George Floyd's death. And included in that is a takeover with several city blocks in Seattle for an area infamously known as CHOP. Can you share some of your comments about what's been happening here in Washington State and across the nation?
Unfortunately, I feel like what should be an opportunity for very powerful, meaningful conversations has really turned into a clear display of lack of leadership, both at the governor's level and as well as the Seattle mayor. The conversations I'm having on the front porch with our community members, they are concerned, they are afraid, but what really isn't, and they really are looking for unity and the opportunity to have really meaningful conversations for their friends of different races, as well as those who are in law enforcement. I am finding great support around both really important conversations and a lot of fear around the lack of leadership that's going on right now in Seattle. And that's really unfortunate that is happening. I also have the unique opportunity to have a son-in-law who is part of the rapid response team for Washington State Patrol, and has been on the front lines of the riots in Seattle and Olympia and Tacoma, as well as evacuating CHOP. And so his perspective has been very heartening and heartwarming. He has many law enforcement officers that stand by him and saying that there is not a single police officer he knows that supports the bad behavior that happened to George Floyd, and that we believe that bad cops should be punished to the full extent of the law. But we do need to make sure that we're continuing to not defund, but include funding that would really help with additional training and professional development and accountability measures for police officers and law enforcement.
Rhonda, if voters out there wanted to learn more about you, could you share how they could get in contact with you or how they could learn how to support your campaign?
Please reach out to Neighbors for Ronda, that's RONDA.com. You're free to call me at any time at 253-380-4480 or email me at litzenbergerronda@gmail.com. I'd love to have your support. Thank you.